Hello Internet, my name is Damian Michaels, but you can call me Blue, and welcome back to another Thursday Night Magic Deck Tour. If you're new here, or you just want a refresher, these videos are pretty simple. First, we go over the commander and talk about what it's trying to do. Next, we run down the full deck list organized into 6 unique categories. Finally, we go over the deck's overall game plan, main strategies, and highlighted strengths and weaknesses so that way you know how to best pilot the deck. Before we get started, a quick reminder that all of our decks are available for sale on our website, ThursdayNightMagic.com. Use code TNM10 for 10% off your first order. You can find a link to today's deck in the description below. Now let's get into the video. So for today's deck, we're looking through Edgar Markov. He is 3 red, white, black for a 4/4 Vampire Knight. He has Eminence. Whenever you cast a vampire spell, if Edgar Markov is in the command zone or on the battlefield, create a 1/1 black vampire creature token. And he also has First Strike, Haste, and whenever he attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on each vampire you control. So Edgar Markov is basically just an army in a can for Vampire Tribal. You play as many vampires as possible, you're going to make a whole bunch of vampire tokens while you do so, and then when you eventually play Edgar, you just get to swing in with everything, alpha strike down the table, and hopefully that wins you the game. But you're going to be doing a lot of vampire shenanigans. So now that we've got the commander out of the way, let's get into the deck itself. We're just going to move Edgar over here. And first, we're going to start with our creatures. We have Knight of the Even Legion. It's 1 black mana for a 1/2 Vampire Knight. You can pay 2 and a black to give it +3/+3 in Death Touch until end of turn. And then at the beginning of your end step, if a player lost 4 or more life this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Knight of the Even Legion. Next is Viscera Seer, single black for a 1/1 Vampire Wizard. You can sacrifice a creature to scry 1. Super simple. Next, we have Indulgent Aristocrat, a single black mana for a 1/1 Vampire Noble with lifelink, and you can pay 2 and sacrifice a creature to put a +1/+1 counter on each vampire you control. Next, we have Vengeful Blood Witch, 1 and a black for a 1/1 Vampire Warlock. Whenever this creature or another creature you control dies, the target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Next, we have Blood Crazed Paladin, 1 and a black for a 1/1 Vampire Knight with Flash, and it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each creature that died this turn. Next, we have Vampire Gourmand, 1 and a black for a 2/2 Vampire. Whenever this creature attacks, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, draw a card, and this creature can't be blocked this turn. Next, we have Cordial Vampire, double black for a 1/1 Vampire. Whenever it or another creature dies, put a +1/+1 counter on each vampire you control. Next, we have Legion Lieutenant, black and a white for a 2/2 Vampire Knight. Other vampires you control get +1/+1. Next, we have Vampire Socialite, black and a red for a 2/2 Vampire Noble with Menace. Whenever it enters the battlefield, and if opponent lost life this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on each other vampire you control. And as long as an opponent lost life this turn, each other vampire you control enters with the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. Next, we have Blood Tithe Harvester, black and a red for a 3/2 Vampire. When it enters, create a blood token, and you can tap and sacrifice it to give target creature -XX until end of turn, where X is twice the number of blood tokens you control. Activate only as a sorcery. Next, we have Mavrin Fane, Dusk Apostle. It's 2 and a white for a 2/2 Vampire Cleric. Whenever 1 or more non-token vampires you control attack, create a 1/1 white vampire creature token with lifelink. Next is Scion of Opulence, 2 and a red for a 3/1 Vampire Noble. Whenever Scion of Opulence or another non-token vampire you control dies, create a treasure token, and then you can pay red and sacrifice 2 artifacts to exile the top card of your library, and you can play that card that turn. Next is Rakish Heir, 2 and a red for a 2/2 Vampire. Whenever a vampire you control deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Next, we have Yahenni, Undying Partisan, 2 and a black for a 2/2 Aetherborn Vampire with Haste. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Yahenni, and you can sacrifice another creature, and Yahenni gains indestructible until end of turn. Next is Markov Baron, 2 and a black for a 2/2 Vampire Noble with Convoke and Lifelink, and other vampires you control get +1/+1, and Madness for 2 and a black. Next is Dark Imposter for 2 and a black 2/2 Vampire Assassin. You can pay 4 double black to exile target creature and put a +1/+1 counter on Dark Imposter, and Dark Imposter has all activated abilities of all creature cards exiled with it. Next, we have Vampire Nighthawk, 1 double black for a 2/3 Vampire Shaman with Flying, Death Touch, and Lifelink. Next is Stormkirk Captain, 1 black-red for a 2/2 Vampire Soldier with first strike. Other vampire creatures you control get +1/+1 and half first strike. Next is Falkenrath Noble, 3 and a black for a 2/2 Vampire Noble with flying. Whenever it or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Next is Sanctum Seeker, 2 double black for a 3/4 Vampire Knight, and whenever a vampire you control attacks, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Next is Sangromancer, 2 double black for a 3/3 Vampire Shaman with flying, and whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, you may gain 3 life, and whenever an opponent discards a card, you may gain 3 life. Next is Bloodhall Priest, 2 black-red for a 4/4 Vampire Cleric. Whenever Bloodhall Priest enters the battlefield or attacks, if you have no cards in hand, Bloodhall Priest deals 2 damage to any target. Next is Strafan Mar Progenitor for 2 black-red for a 3/2 Vampire Noble with flying. At the beginning of your end step, create a blood token for each player who lost life this turn, and whenever she attacks, you may sacrifice 2 blood tokens. If you do, you may put a vampire card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. That creature gains indestructible until end of turn. Next is Bloodline Necromancer, 4 and a black for a 3/2 Vampire Wizard with lifelink, and whenever Bloodline Necromancer enters the battlefield, you may return target vampire or wizard card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Next is Drana Calastria Bloodchief, 3 double black for a 4/4 Vampire Shaman with flying, and you can pay X double black and target creature gets -0x until end of turn, and Drana Calastria Bloodchief gets +XO until end of turn. Next is Champion of Dusk, 3 double black for a 4/4 Vampire Knight. Whenever it enters the battlefield, you draw X cards and lose X life, where X is the number of vampires you control. Next we have Malakir Bloodwitch, 3 double black for a 4/4 Vampire Shaman with flying and protection from white, and whenever Malakir Bloodwitch enters the battlefield, each opponent loses life equal to the number of vampires you control, and you gain life equal to the amount of life lost this way. Next we have Bloodlord of Vazagoth, 3 double black for a 3/3 Vampire Warrior with Bloodthirst 3, and whenever you cast a vampire creature spell, it gains Bloodthirst 3. Next is Anawan the Ruined Sage, 3 double black for a 4/3 Vampire Shaman. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player sacrifices a non-vampire creature. Next is Blood Baron of Viscopa, 3 white-black for a 4/4 Vampire with lifelink, protection from white and from black. And as long as you have 30 or more life and an opponent has 10 or less life, it gets +6/6 and has flying. Next is Crossway Troublemakers, 5 and a black for a 5/5 Vampire. Attacking vampires you control have Death Touch and lifelink, and whenever a vampire you control dies, you may pay 2 life. If you do, draw a card. Next is Patron of the Vein, 4 double black for a 4/4 Vampire Shaman with flying, and whenever it enters the battlefield, destroy target creature an opponent controls. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, exile it and put a +1/+1 counter on each vampire you control. And our final creature in the deck is Timothar, Baron of Bats, 4 double black for a 4/4 Vampire Noble. It has Ward, discard a card, and whenever another non-token vampire you control dies, you may pay 1 and exile it. If you do, create a 1/1 black bat creature token with flying. It gains when this creature deals combat damage to a player, sacrifice it, and return the exiled card to the battlefield tapped. Now that we've gone through all of the creatures in the deck, next we're going to move on to our ramp package. First we have Soul Ring, just a single mana for an artifact, tap to add 2 colorless. Almost everybody knows what Soul Ring does. Next we have Boros Signet, 2 colorless for a Signet, pay 1 and filter it for Boros mana. Rakdos Signet, same thing but for Rakdos mana. And Orzhov Signet, same thing but for Orzhov mana. And Arcane Signet, it's just a Signet that adds 1 mana of any color of your commander's color identity. Then we have Commander Sphere, 3 mana artifact, tap to add 1 mana of your commander's color identity, and you can sacrifice it to draw a card. So it's just Arcane Signet that can draw you a card. And now that we've got our ramp out of the way, we're going to move on to our card draw. First we have Vampiric Rite, single black mana for an enchantment. You can pay 1 and a black to sacrifice a creature, gain a life, and draw a card. Next we have Village Rite, single black for an instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature, draw 2 cards. Sign of Blood, double black sorcery, target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. Read the Bones, 2 and a black for a sorcery, scry 2, draw 2 cards, lose 2 life. Underworld Connections, 1 double black for an aura that enchants a land, and you can tap the enchanted land to pay a life and draw a card. Next we have Ambition's Cost, 3 and a black for a sorcery, you draw 3 cards and lose 3 life. Next is Skeletal Scrying, X and a black for an instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, exile X cards from your graveyard, you draw X cards and you lose X life. Next is Damnable Pact, X double black for a sorcery, target player draws X cards and loses X life. So Skeletal Scrying without their exile clause. Now that we've moved past our card draw, we're going to move on to our removal. First is Crackling Doom, red, white, black. For an instant, it deals 2 damage to each opponent, and they sacrifice a creature with the greatest power among creatures that player controls. Next is Mortify, 1 white, black. Destroy target creature or enchantment as an instant. Return to Dust, 2 double white. For an instant, exile target artifact or enchantment, and if you cast the spell during your main phase, you may exile up to 1 other artifact or enchantment. Next is Consuming Vapors, 3 and a black. For a sorcery. Target player sacrifices a creature, you gain life equal to that creature's toughness, and it has rebound, so you get to do it again the next turn. Next is Olivia's Wrath, 4 and a black. For a sorcery. Each non-vampire creature gets -XX until end of turn, where X is the number of vampires you control. Next is Merciless Eviction, 4 white, black. For a sorcery. Choose 1, exile artifacts, exile all creatures, exile all enchantments, and exile all planeswalkers. Alright, now that we're through our removal, next we're going to move on to just generic support pieces that help us either close out the game or stay alive, things like that. First, we have Vampiric Fury, 1 and a red. For an instant. Vampires you control get +2/+0 and gain first strike until end of turn. Next is Heirloom Blade, 3 mana equipment. Equipped creature gets +3/+1, and whenever equipped creature dies, you may reveal cards from the top of your library and choose a favorite creature card that shares a creature type with it. Put that card into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Next, we have Curse of Vitality, 2 and a white. For an aura that enchants a player. Whenever enchanted player is attacked, you gain 2 life. Each opponent attacking that player does the same. Next is Stensia Masquerade, 2 and a white. For an enchantment. Attacking creatures you control at first strike. Whenever a vampire you control deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and it has Madness for 2 and a red. Next is Ardeal Alchemy, 2 and a red. For an enchantment. Whenever Ardeal Alchemy enters a battlefield, create a blood token for each opponent you have, and blood tokens you control are equipped in addition to their other types, and have equipped creature gets +2/0 and equipped 2. Next is Shared Animosity, 2 and a red. For an enchantment. Whenever a creature you control attacks, it gets +1/0 until end of turn for each other attacking creature that shares a creature type with it. Next is Etchings of the Chosen, 1 white, black. For an enchantment. When it enters, choose a creature type. Creatures of the chosen type get +1/+1, and you can sacrifice a creature of the chosen type to give any creature indestructible until end of turn. Next we have New Blood, 2 double black. For a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast the spell, tap an untapped vampire you control, and gain control of target creature. Change the text of that creature by replacing all instances of one creature type with vampire. And that is everything for our support. We're going to briefly discuss the lands. There's not really much to go over here. It's just a whole bunch of basics, so that way we can cast our spells. We have a handful of dual lands of each color. We have a couple fetch lands here at the end, and just some generic 5-color lands, some tribal support lands, Unclaimed Territory, Secluded Courtyard, Voldaren Estate, Path of Ancestry. Nothing really of note in the lands, they're just there. But yeah, that is the entire deck. Now we're going to get into the strategy. This is normally where we'd also talk about the deck's strengths and weaknesses, but ironically, Edgar's biggest weakness is his strength. Anyone who's played with or against Edgar knows just how powerful he is and how quickly he can run away with the game if left unchecked. So you will almost definitely be archenemy out of the gate. It's important to understand that when playing a deck like this, you can't just sit back and durdle. You need to be getting into the red zone as often as possible, as quickly as possible, so that way you can apply some pressure. This is going to eventually force your opponents to reset the board, which is what we want them to do, because that leads us into our second main synergy of the deck, which is our sacrifice theme. We make a whole bunch of tokens from Edgar, and we have a bunch of ways to make a bunch of bat tokens and small vampire tokens that are inconsequential by the end of the game, so we can use these tokens for value to sacrifice them to things like Yahenni or Visceraseer to give to Scry or give it Indestructible so we can keep applying pressure. But then if our opponent decides to blow up the board, then we can sack everything to these abilities, get some value out of them while our opponent's resetting everything, and then we can untap, rebuild, and then if they try to do it again, we just get more value out of our sacrifice synergies. It's a win-win. So we apply pressure to deal some damage, and then they reset the board, then we get value out of them resetting the board. If they don't reset the board, then we just get to keep pressuring and we eventually get in for enough damage and just win the game. Anyway, that's all for today. Consider dropping us a like and subscribing. It lets us know we're doing something right and we're making content that you enjoy and want to watch. It's free and you can always change your mind later. Now allow me to cast the time stop to end the video, and I'll see you next time.